Mike, it seems as though there were safety measures put in place at this school. So
yes.
it makes you wonder, could this have been stopped at all when we hear about the details?
Well, you know, we don't know for sure exactly what happened, but I know yesterday Rita Cosby had been talking to some of the people there in the neighborhood of the house where Nancy where she was found dead. And some of those people were getting stories from the school that coincided with what I was hearing on some of the tapes of the units responding, police units responding to the school, that the front window was knocked out and they didn't know why. That was over the communications tapes between the dispatcher and the first arriving units. So did he go up, knock that window out, reach in and let himself into that school? Because they had a security system in place where you would come up and you would press a button, a buzzer, and there was apparently a video system in the school office that would look down and see you. And then we've also heard from other people who live there that they could also talk to you through an intercom right there at that front door. So we don't know exactly what happened. I'm hoping that that system they have, Mike and Susan, I'm hoping that system that they have also records, because that can really shed a lot of light on what really happened in those first moments.
Yeah, and Rita had reported that. Again, we're working to independently confirm that, but then potentially that plate glass window was shot out and he reached around and let himself in. Very well could have happened here, and then the confrontation with the principal.
Right.
We're also getting new information, Mike, that the shooter not only had access to the 3 guns that we've talked about, Sig Sauer, a Glock, and a Bushmaster, but maybe 2 more, so 5 weapons in all. I mean, what more does that tell you about his mindset? And maybe it could have been even worse.
Well, you know, we're hearing that the weapons were his mother's, and I'm getting a lot on Facebook, and I'm getting emails from some of my law enforcement and first responder firefighter friends going, why did this woman want to have all these weapons? And that's a question that remains unanswered right now. You know, was it on his behest, possibly? Was it, did she buy them for him? Did she buy them for someone else? We don't know. And these are all questions we hope to have answered in the coming week as we find out more and more about this family. And the big question, why? Why did this happen? Why did he do this at this school?
And the state of Connecticut, very difficult to get a firearm.
Yeah, it's more difficult than some states, you know, and but you still got to go through a background check. You still have to fill out all the paperwork like you would in any other state, and you know, it just remains to be seen. When did she get these weapons? Was she an avid shooter? That's a possibility too, but we have not heard any of that so far.
All right, Mike, thanks again. Again, we want to let everybody know that small picture that you see on the right side of your screen, that's a live look, Newtown, Connecticut, as we're waiting any moment now. A news conference. We'll get more information. It was set to begin at 8 o'clock, but we've got to believe. Mike, real quick, weigh in on this. And I'm sure you've been a part of, like, how much information do we give out? What information? It takes time to make sure you want all your ducks in a row. You don't want to rush anything, right?
Exactly, because we've already had some information, you know, that had come out that from law enforcement that was wrong yesterday. And that could be the reason why, because he might have had his brother's identification on him. So they want to make sure they get it right. We heard from Lieutenant Vance of the Connecticut State Police yesterday, said, you know, they are going to make sure that all the identifications are done meticulously, that the crime scene is done meticulously. And then you've got then you've got to remove all of those little bodies from the school. So they've been working throughout the night, and you know, there's no hurry. They just want to make sure the job is done right.
That's such a heart-wrenching detail to think of these parents not only losing a child, but at one point, at least throughout the afternoon, yes, they couldn't even go see their child to say goodbye and all that. And it's because law enforcement has to do their job.
Absolutely. And I was glad to hear, though, that they had assigned, the police department had assigned an officer or an investigator to each one of the families to keep them up to date on what was going on, because that's so important in a case like this. You know, because if I'm a parent, I'm going to be asking why, you know, what's going on? What do we know so far? Because you know, it's just
it's devastating.
You can't put it to words. Yeah. It's just unbelievable.